Now, one of the big advertising agency debates in South Africa right now is whether to choose a local independent agency or a multinational with access to global thinking. thenetworkone is a UK-based enterprise that facilitates appropriate partnership between smaller independent agencies worldwide. Johannesburg agency Chillibush has just joined the network, and we were joined earlier by Managing Director Dale Hefer, along with Paul Squirrell, who is Network Director at thenetworkone. Right, Dale, I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb here, and I'm going to suggest this premise to you that independent or smaller agencies in South Africa over the past maybe 2 years seem to be achieving perhaps bigger success in proportion to their size. Is there a move towards smaller in this country, or am I just overjuicing it?
I think there is, Jeremy, and I'd like to think it's because of perhaps a slightly idealistic belief that clients are wanting to keep their fees in the country and not send 70% of their fees offshore, and perhaps they want to work with an agency where there's more opportunity than 30% on the BEE front. But I suspect that may not necessarily be the only reason. I think the reason for the move to the smaller agencies is because there's a perception that smaller agencies and independent agencies in South Africa understand the local market better. We sell ourselves as being a homegrown agency, and I think that's got quite a strong pull.
All right, Paul, you're nodding your head. Obviously, you agree with what Dale is saying, but this isn't just a South African experience, is it? Is there also perhaps a move worldwide to look at perhaps more niched, more focused, slightly smaller agencies instead of going to the big monolith?
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen it around the world, and it's not necessarily smaller. It's really about agencies that are owner-managed and owner-driven, where there's a care and a passion that not necessarily something that you're going to find in some of the larger agencies. It's the person with the name above the door. It's their mortgage at the end of the day that is paid by the fees that are delivered, so they want to deliver
Don't say mortgage, you're making a very nervous ring.
Could you see me twitching?
But it's a good point.
But it's a very good point. And, you know, if you look at the German market, for example, there are some massive accounts. Probably the most prevalent one recently was Lufthansa, which was handed to an independent agency to run their global advertising business. It's a huge piece of business, and that's a massive airline.
But the big aligned agencies, the big group agencies will say, well, you know, we bring power of weight, power of experience, power of talent. We have the money to buy the best people in. And we also have this thing called proprietary tools. Yeah. I've never quite worked out what proprietary tools are. But I mean, there is a case for the bigger agency, surely.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, that they're not going to disappear. And it's horses for courses. But equally, I mean, Dale and I were talking earlier, I mean, proprietary tools are great, but, you know, we've all got tools. We all do things in a particular way, and certainly by what we do at thenetworkone, I mean, if a client wants information from any particular country, or we can find that just as easily as a major network through through what we have.
More difficult, though, Dale, for the smaller agency, or let's call it the owner-managed agency. I think maybe smaller agency, as Paul suggests, is maybe a little bit disingenuous. Sometimes there is a sense, though, that it's more difficult to get onto the so-called pitch list, that you have to battle that much harder, that brands just default to what they know. How do you overcome that challenge?
I think it is changing because potential clients are starting to appreciate that an independent agency is more able to scale up quickly and easily, whereas the monolithic agencies have all sorts of infrastructures that they have to stick to.
Turning the oil tanker, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So we like to think that we're very agile and flexible, and the clients are starting to appreciate that, especially with the diversity of service offerings that come together with your offering to the pitch, from digital to media to advertising. And being a smaller agency, they know we can pick and choose the partners that we want to work with. We are tied down to certain people within the agency that may limit our offering in terms of specialist services.
So, Paul, is it about being nimble, as Dale suggests, or, as she also raised earlier, is it just simply down to the money, that, you know, they charge less?
I think it's a little bit of both, and if you were to talk to procurement departments, of course, they'll look at it from the money point of view. But again, there's a lot of the agencies out there, and Chillibush is a great example. It's about being small, and I think one of the great analogies, if you're to look at it, is as a small agency, you can custom build the network that you're going to work with and choose the people. And the monolithic agency networks, they can't do that because they have mouths to feed, they have stuff in place already. And our industry is one of the few industries that assumes that having this big monster permanently owned is a good thing. Look at the film industry. You only go out and you work with the best people for a particular picture. Then you move on and get new people for a different picture. Creative services should be the same, and particularly as the market fragments more, there are more people out there in specific disciplines which are interested to work with.
Now, the Network One, you also bring some kind of coalescing to this model, don't you? What do you do?
Essentially, we're a network of about 750 now independent agencies, and we cover 106 countries. And we work with agencies like Chillibush, and we provide them with essentially a network on demand of international resources. We coordinate the stuff through London because that's where we happen to be based, but in truth we could be anywhere in the world. So Dale would pick up the phone and say, hey, we have a pitch for this, we need an international partner, can you align us? And we would do that based on geography, skill sets, all of the normal things you'd expect to find a good partner, and put the two together. And it goes beyond that to where you have agencies that potentially need information to help them with an existing client. We're working on XYZ brand. Can you tell me how this brand is represented in these countries? Sure, pick up the phone, we'll contact our partners and get that information to you, normally within 24 hours. So it's a network of independent agencies that are working together to achieve a common goal, which is basically to help each other.
Well, on a similar theme coming up on the programme, how one independent Durban agency is getting it right. Mags on Media on Facebook and on Twitter.
News that moves. enca.com.